What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and you're probably like everyone else out there looking on YouTube right now and seeing a billion different videos about the official announcement of Call of Duty World War II. Now, yes, technically I am making a video about this, but in a completely separate way, because I want to talk about one thing specifically and the kind of knock-on effect it's going to have in relation to the one specific thing, but we'll get to that in a second. So if you're looking for Call of Duty info on World War II, or you're looking for modes or details about the story or whatever, this is not the video for you. So you can just like either stay if you want, I don't mind, or you can just back out and save yourself the time if that's not what you're here for. What I do want to talk about though is the fact that Call of Duty World War II is going to be releasing in November of 2017, but it's only going to be releasing on Xbox One, PS4 and PC. So you may know that there's no version dedicated to 2017's only proper new console release. I realize Project Scorpio is going to be out later this year, but that's essentially just a beefed up Xbox One, so it doesn't count. So yeah, the Nintendo Switch does not have a confirmed port of Call of Duty World War II. That's really weird to say as a name, Call of Duty World War II. So what does that mean? Now, first off, were people expecting a Call of Duty World War II port on, I was going to say November Switch, on Nintendo Switch? Some people were. I was looking around and I've been keeping an eye on this. I'm obviously part of, say, Nintendo communities as well as other communities as well. And the general gist of it was roughly about 50% of the Nintendo communities that I keep my eye on were not expecting a Nintendo Switch port for various reasons. There was multiple different sources cited and multiple different reasons and variants cited, but overall, roughly about 50% of the ones that I kept my eye on did not expect a port. Some of them did, some of them weren't sure, but they could see it more happening than not. Some were absolutely guaranteed it was going to happen. But the vast majority, or well, literally the majority, 50% of everyone seemed to be in agreement that it wasn't going to happen. I myself agreed that there's not going to be a Switch port. There's not going to be Call of Duty World War II on Nintendo Switch. So lo and behold, we have now the announcement tonight. It happened like an hour ago, of Call of Duty World War II, and they did confirm that it's only going to be on PS4, Xbox One and PC. So what does that mean? So first off, let's look at the Nintendo Switch now, and to look properly at the Call of Duty series and the Nintendo Switch, we have to take one quick step back, one generation. You could go back to 2 generations and start with the Wii, but I'm specifically going to look at the Wii U. Now the reason for that is the Wii U was the first 8th-generation console. It released obviously towards the latter half of, well, towards the end of the latter half of the 7th generation in relation to the Xbox 360 and PS3. However, there was still roughly a year minimum before Microsoft and Sony released their consoles, and you know what, 2-3 years later, they're still technically supporting them in like 1 or 2 games a year. But the main thing about that is the Wii U, while an 8th-generation system and did launch nearly 10 years after the 7th-generation systems from the competitors, the Wii U was basically a marginal upgrade, albeit a difficult to program for marginal upgrade over the 7th-generation systems offered by Microsoft and Sony. So essentially it was a marginally more powerful Xbox 360 or PS3, which meant you saw games of roughly the same equivalent graphical fidelity and performance of the 360 and PS3 on the Wii U, as indicated by the Call of Duty games that were released on the Wii U. There was Call of Duty Ghosts, and I think Black Ops 2? Was that on the Wii U? I only remember Ghosts for some reason. There could be more, but I literally only remember Ghosts, and that's the main one. No, now that I think about it, there definitely was Black Ops 2 in there as well. So on the Wii U, you had two Call of Duty games. You had Call of Duty Ghosts and Call of Duty Black Ops 2. So both of these games were also, sure, they were available on the other 8th generation platforms like the PS4 and Xbox One, but these two in particular, Black Ops 2 and Ghosts, were also available on the 7th generation consoles. So they're available on what was more similar in hardware performance, I should say, rather, and I suppose technically to an extent, more similar in architecture, because Xbox 360 and let me try that one again, Xbox One and PS4 are much different from the 360, the PS3, and the Wii U. So, granted, they're all very different from each other as well, but there's a further difference from the 8th generation. Anyway, that's getting a bit off topic. So, the fact is that these games that released on 360, PS3, and Wii U, they had similar level ports, similar level in graphic fidelity ports and performance-wise. So it's not unreasonable to expect the fact that those 360 and PS3 versions existed, that a Wii U version would be feasible and existed, which they did. But if you remember, Call of Duty Ghosts was actually not the last version. Not version is the wrong word. Call of Duty Ghost was not the final game in the... so Ghost was not the last game to appear on the previous generation. For example, we had Advanced Warfare the following year, and we had, to an extent, Black Ops 3, which also appeared on Xbox 360. But you have to remember, the Xbox 360 version of Black Ops 3 did not... Well, and the PS3 version, the 7th generation version, basically, did not have campaigns. They just weren't able to support it. So there was a whole issue there. So it's not understandable based on sales, or it's not unreasonable based on sales numbers and just the trend of everything moving away and moving more towards the more powerful 8th generation from the Microsoft and Sony side of it, as well as PC, of course. And they'd kind of leave the Wii U behind with the 7th generation consoles. Now, granted, the Wii U got left behind before the 7th generation consoles, but that's the point. At the end of the day, with the time, money, and manpower they actually have to put into developing this versus the sales numbers they'd get back, it's understandable why they kind of just glossed over it and just tossed it out for the Wii U version. So, at the same time, is the Wii U I realize this conversation is about the Switch, but it's a little bit of a history lesson. The Wii U console, rather than versions, was slightly more powerful than a 360 and PS3, despite releasing 8 or 9 years later. And at the same time, the Nintendo Switch is basically an NVIDIA X1. Now, an NVIDIA X1 is essentially... What's the best way of describing it? Most people will say, oh, it's halfway between the Wii U and the Xbox One, or it's half the power of the Xbox One. That doesn't give you a good grasp of what it does, because half the power of something in what can be used in multiple different ways, with all the different games and different games requiring different graphical settings and all that kind of stuff. The best way to describe it is the X1 is essentially a low-end PC that can run 7th generation games at maximum, if that makes sense. Because when you look at what the X1 can do, at least in the NVIDIA Shield side of it, it can basically run games from the 360 and PS3 era maxed out, for the most part. So, it's more powerful than a Wii U, but barely. It's slightly more powerful than a Wii U. Now, because of all that, it would essentially remove so much. It would almost be like going back to releasing a 7th generation version of Call of Duty World War II just to have a Nintendo Switch port, which most people probably wouldn't even buy. And I'm just saying that's my opinion. Most people probably wouldn't buy it because, let's face it, there's 45, maybe 50 million PS4s out there. There's 25 plus Xbox, 25 plus Xbox Ones. Imagine that. 25 plus million Xbox Ones out there. There's how many PCs that can play that can play these Call of Duty games, even if they're not playing them at max. There's how many people that can just turn them on and actually play them. Exactly. There are literally dozens of millions of every competitive platform out there. And with the Nintendo Switch, it's obviously going to be such a pared back port, as well as coupled with the potential sales of it, that it wasn't really worth their time. It wasn't worth their time to basically make a 7th generation version of this new Call of Duty game. Because remember, Nintendo Switch is technically a 9th generation console. It's the first and only 9th generation console we actually have. So the fact is that it's barely more powerful than a 7th generation console, let alone the same company's 8th generation console. I'm not bashing the Switch, by the way. I'm just putting it in comparison for people watching this video. But the point is that in 2017, when the Nintendo Switch released, it was in this aspect underpowered. Yes, it technically is underpowered in general, so I'm not bashing it, but you get the idea. So the amount of time, effort, development resources, cost, all that stuff to actually develop an entirely different version. It's not just, oh, pare back the existing one. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. It would have required a lot more time and effort that that Activision deemed, hey, this isn't worth our time to make. With the amount of money, time, and development cost versus how much we'll probably sell on it, which is arguably nothing, it's not worth our time. So I think that's one of the main reasons why. That's probably the main reason why there is no Nintendo Switch version of Call of Duty World War II. The last part I want to touch on is what this means for the Nintendo Switch and third-party games. Nintendo consoles have always had issues with third-party support, especially with the Wii U. The Wii had exceptional third-party support. In technicality, it did, because it had over 100 million units sold, which means everyone wanted to make games for the Wii. Now, the problem is everyone wanted to make absolute shit with just very basic gimmicky motion controls, just because there was 100 million plus people out there who could potentially buy your game, which probably had very, very low production costs. So that was why they did that. Then you look at the Wii U, which obviously had power issues at the time, as well as coding and development issues, and the sales numbers as well. So when you look at that, third-party support, it didn't even start strong, if you ask me, on the Wii U. It started about mediocre, and then quickly fell off. It quickly dropped down to the point where you only realistically had Ubisoft, who will support fucking anything at this point. And even then, even Ubisoft just dropped off, and it was basically, hey, if you're buying a Nintendo platform, or if you want to buy any game on the Wii U in like the last 3 years of its life, it's got to be a first-party Nintendo game. It's basically how it ended up. So the Switch doesn't want to be like that. The Switch is already in a very strange position based on the actual hardware and philosophy behind the console, with the hybrid and the handheld console hybrid, as well as being able to take it with you and all. Because of all of that, when you look at what the Switch can do and when it released versus the competitors, it's understandable that other companies, other publishers and third-party devs and third-party publishers can be wary. And we've already seen that with a number of third-party developers and publishers not bringing their games to Switch, as of Call of Duty, for example. There's other ones as well that are very high profile. There's certain game series that aren't. I mean, EA, for example, have only committed to bringing FIFA to the Nintendo Switch. FIFA, arguably the biggest game that there is, because almost everyone plays FIFA. When you look at the amount of sales FIFA does in a year across all platforms, it's completely understandable that they'd want to bring that. I mean, you know, everyone's going to buy it, especially with some of the whole local portable multiplayer aspect of it for the Switch. But anyway, back on topic. So you've already seen companies like EA do it. You've companies like Ubisoft who, you know, did Watch Dogs 2 didn't come out on the Switch. Chances are the new Assassin's Creed game won't come out on the Switch. There's, what else do Ubisoft make? Far Cry 56 probably won't come out on the Switch. Tom Clancy's everything won't come out on the Switch. You get my point. Square Enix are the same way. They're basically making their like 3DS Vita style games, and they're just putting them on the Switch instead, and they're treating it like that. So you're not seeing Final Fantasy 15 ported over. You probably won't see Final Fantasy 16 ported over. You'll probably not see Kingdom Hearts 3 ported over. So essentially, it's already slightly worrying. The Switch is getting some third-party support, but it's possibly not what it needs, and that has a big cycle of issues. And the big cycle of issues that is that companies will release mediocre and low quality games on the Switch and not their big tentpole titles and their tentpole franchises. And these games may not sell large amounts because they could be just low quality, or they could be new IPs that no one is really interested in, or something to that effect. And the problem is they won't sell as much. This goes for all third-party publishers. They won't sell as much, and then those companies will see, oh well, they didn't really do great sales, we'll slash the budgets for the next games we're putting out on the console, as well as commit less games to the console. And it's a vicious cycle, because the production costs will usually be even lower, and the amount of games that come out will be even lower. It'll in turn be like, oh well, it's sold even worse, let's just not support it. So that has a risk of happening, a la Wii U style, just all over again. And that's something that the Switch doesn't want, because it's already in a precarious position when it comes to that stuff as well. Now, granted, all this could be wrong, and this could be, the Switch could be the new Wii, and it could go on to sell 125 million units, and it could have everyone and their grandmother could have 6 Switches in their house, one for every room, just for the sake of it. I could be wrong. Time will tell, but I mean, I've got a basis for this, and this is just my speculation on it, but I do feel like I've got a decent basis for this based on history and how these businesses think and how these businesses see it, because they're all about making profit at the end of the day. They're not going to voluntarily make a game and release a game that will lose money or barely even break even. So they're not going to go out of their way just to do it because they love games. These are companies who answers to CEOs, who answer to shareholders, who all want to make ridiculous amounts of money. So that's what it is. So that's my opinion on Call of Duty World at War 2. Not World at War 2. Call of Duty World War 2. There you go. Not coming out on the Switch, and the potential effects, or the potential reason or reasons why it's not coming out on the Switch, as well as the potential knock-on effects that it's not coming out on the Switch. Battlefield 1, for example, is another good one. Didn't come out on a Nintendo Switch, even if the Switch released a couple of months after the game actually came out. Anyway, you get my point. So let me know in the comments section below if you agree with anything I've said. Were you looking forward to a Switch port of World War II? Were you expecting one? Are you going to buy it on something else, even if it would have came out on the Switch? Or do you have an opinion on the third-party issue, with the third-party support and the lack of which, or the weird position that the Switch is in? We covered a good bit in this video, so if there's anything you want to comment on in that, just throw it down in the section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter, details in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the rest of the videos in my channel.